are these people?
A top independent journalist, Arturo Dominguez over at Decolonized Journalism, does a hell of a job. And he's been doing it a long time for Unicorn Riot, for a bunch of other independent outlets, and on his own as a freelancer at Decolonized Journalism. Now, he put in experts denounce intervention in Venezuela as the U.S. military buildup continues. I don't think that's much of a surprise to anyone, right? Experts condemn the U.S.'s recent actions in the Caribbean, its threats against Venezuela, and its history of coercion in Latin America. That's a kind way of saying regime change, right? So we know what's been happening. Last week, three United Nations specialists in human rights, extrajudicial executions, and the international order issued a statement denouncing the U.S.'s actions against Venezuela. How many boats have been bombed now, like just out of the water? I think we're up to 10, Reeve?
7 or 8, I think. Yeah, something like that.
I thought we were up to as many as 10.
I've not kept count specifically, but
that could be. All right. Experts decried the covert and clandestine actions that the U.S. is employing while condemning the history of similar interventions and the lasting harm the United States has done over decades in Latin America. Fair. The experts are now warning of the dangers of U.S. military buildup. We're going to talk about that in a second. That the recent announcements by the White House regarding the use of lethal force in international waters are without legal justification, for sure. And that possible covert or direct military action against Venezuela constitutes a violation of the UN Charter, which they don't give a shit about. They essentially called out the United States for fabricating enemies to justify a supposed right to defense, resulting in extrajudicial murder in the Caribbean. Yeah, that's what's been happening. Quote, covert action and threats of using armed force against the government of Venezuela by the United States violate Venezuela's sovereignty and the UN Charter.
Yep.
Yes. And Trump doesn't seem to give a flying fig, as the revolution continues, just pointed out. When did the U.S. ever care about the UN? I don't know. Right. Good day, Harps. Good to see you everywhere. Marlon Weems, how are you, sir? All right. So, according to this statement, the experts have been in contact with the United States and have urged leaders to cease unlawful attacks and threats and respect international law and reaffirm its commitment to multilateralism.
Whatever that means.
And then it continued to prompt them with a strongly worded letter to adhere to the purposes and principles of the UN Charter that they wipe their ass with daily. A request that the admin seems willing to ignore, obviously, based upon the deployment of the aircraft carrier Gerald Ford and its strike group to the Caribbean. Right? The USS Ford's carrier group, which includes 5 destroyers and is currently deployed to the Mediterranean, adds the additional troops sent to Trinidad, adds to the additional troops that were sent to Trinidad and Tobago. Allegedly, they're also now talking about using Puerto Rico as another base for this operation, potentially. The USS Gravely, which will later be followed by the U.S. Marine Corps' 22nd Expeditionary Unit, blah, 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 is officially in Trinidad and Tobago to conduct military exercises over several days and is set to leave on October 30th. It should be noted that Trinidad is just 7 miles from the Venezuelan coast at its nearest point. Now, what's really interesting is I remember when there were other military exercises happening in the Baltic Sea right around the summertime of 2022. And about 3 months later, Nord Stream went kaflooey. So could there be some operations happening underwater, too? Quite possibly. Look for an internet cable possibly to be cut. Statement from the UN experts came just 3 days after the UN Security Council warned of mounting risks to regional peace after the extrajudicial killings of alleged drug smugglers and fishermen. I wouldn't even call them alleged because the only person that's alleged who they are is the Trump admin. But they've produced no receipts and no admin, no evidence at all. So how can you say that they're even alleged? It's literally just blatantly accused by the Trump administration without evidence. 3 experts are George.
Provided zero to anybody.
Right.
Trust us.
Just trust us, bro.
We killed this guy, but he was horrid.
We took out that boat. It was terrible. It was covering drugs. It was carrying drugs. Fentanyl. Cocaine. Even though cocaine doesn't really come from Venezuela. That's a whole other story. Right? So you have your 3 experts here. Right? You got one who is an independent expert on promoting a democratic and equitable international order. Okay. You've got Ben Saul, who's a special rapporteur on the promotion and protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms while countering terrorism. Right? And then you also have another special rapporteur, this one on extrajudicial summary of arbitrary executions. So you seem to have a team of experts that know what they're talking about when it comes to this stuff. That are all saying that, yeah, this is a problem, that they're violating sovereignty, that they're breaking whatever international laws and treaties we've all signed to and agreed to mutually. But for whatever reason, we're just allowed to violate it. And there are no consequences. There are no repercussions. And it just happens. At some point, there might be repercussions, but we haven't seen any happen quite yet. Now, if what we have seen in repercussions is in trade, in people moving their business away from doing business with the United States, in BDS, effectively. Also because the tariffs have made it to the point where they really have no choice but to seek elsewhere in some cases because we've made U.S. goods too expensive for them. Right? So that's the first half of what's happened in Venezuela. The second half of it came from an Indie Media Award honoree at Antiwar, Dave DeCamp. And this happened the other night. U.S. flies B-1 bombers near the Caribbean in the latest provocation aimed at Venezuela. Now, I listened to somebody talking about how they just want to get Maduro, how they just want to get the oil. But I seem to recall Maduro basically offering them the oil, if I'm correct. So it's not just about the oil. They also want a puppet that they have.
Not all of it.
That they can control and is friendly
they want
to
complete
them.
Control.
Sure they do. But I think that it's more about getting rid of Maduro because he's perceived to be a socialist, even though he's more authoritarian. But he was also, he was elected. He won an election last year that everyone else in the world certified and signed off on, and their Supreme Court. People are like, oh yeah, the Supreme Court that's friendly to him or whatever. No, they're Supreme Court. They have independence, but yeah, it's crazy to me that. So we're flying 2 B-1B bombers over the Caribbean on Thursday in the latest provocation in the region aimed at Venezuela. Right? But it's not just Venezuela. I think they also want to provoke Petro. Because Petro in Colombia has also been pretty outspoken against Trump, right?
Yeah. Yep. At least recently.
Right. A U.S. official told the Wall Street Journal, boo. So take it with a grain of salt. A, because it came from a U.S. official, and B, because it came through the Wall Street Journal, that the bombers took off from Dias Air Force Base in Texas on Thursday and flew near Venezuela. When asked about the report, Trump said it was false, but the bombers were spotted on flight trackers, and other U.S. officials confirmed that the flight took place. So, like usual, somebody's lying, and it's usually Trump, as usual. Right? Last week, the U.S. flew 3 B-52 bombers near Venezuela in what the U.S. Air Force called a bomber attack demonstration mission.
It sounds like what fucking Reagan used to do. Fly by Russia and shit. You know? Like, same kind of shit.
U.S. Special Ops helicopters have also flown within 90 miles of Venezuela as part of a major U.S. military buildup in the region, which has involved the deployment of 8 naval warships so far. Provocations come amid reports that the U.S. is preparing to bomb Venezuela. What did they do, again, as a sovereign nation to justify being bombed? I guess they don't have to do anything anymore. And as Trump is threatening to launch strikes against alleged drug shipments on land, they still have yet to produce again any evidence about any kind of drug trafficking. While it is the pretext for the military campaign, U.S. officials have been clear that the real goal is regime change in Venezuela. I seem to recall doing a report that Victoria Nuland went to South America last year. And for us saying literally, watch this space for a regime change operation. I honestly think that this was started under Biden / Harris, and that this was just continued by the Trump administration. This was already on the books and planned. The U.S. has also bombed at least 7 alleged drug boats, again, alleged only by the U.S. without evidence, in the Caribbean, and 2 in the Eastern Pacific near Colombia. Like I said, they are also going after Petro. This is personal. The U.S. War Department, the Department of War, has provided...
So stupid.
Thank you. No evidence to back up its claims about what the vessels were carrying, or to back up its assertion that the people it has been killing are narco-terrorists, a term that the administration has been using to justify extrajudicial executions at sea. And support Antiwar.com.
Fucking whatever.
Support Dave DeCamp.
Yeah, go do that.
He actually did a 1-hour sit down with Ryan Christian at Last American Vagabond yesterday. And it was the first time they've ever done an interview together. They were like, Ryan, it came out during the interview that Dave's like, I was looking it up, and it's like, have we done... Amazingly, never happened before. So hopefully it won't be the last. It was a really good sit-down conversation between the two of them. Those are 2 of the guys that I rely on most for what's really happening in the Middle East, in Venezuela, with the duopoly and the 2-party illusion that they're trying to push forth. So again, Last American Vagabond and Antiwar.com. Go follow them both. Support independent media. We amplify and talk about independent sources here, like Arturo, like Antiwar.com. And because we do so, we are not monetized by YouTube. And therefore, we ask you to support us in other ways. If you can do so, the best ways to do that are at Cash App, $ Indie News Network, over at ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. You see them all up on that slide there. That's our wall of fame. All these amazing people have already supported our channel. We really love you, and so grateful for everyone that can do that. I know times are really tough right now. PayPal.me/Indie News Network if you got PayPal. At IndieNewsNow.com, there's a way to put in a credit card or Amazon Pay or basically any other way you can think of through Stripe. And then we've got our Substacks. We're live over at IndieMediaToday.com. Hello to everyone watching over there. And then I just waved to my screen, even though you can't see me because I'm a tool. And then INNNewsletter.com. That's the network's newsletter where we put out a weekly update of all the activity that happens from everybody at the network. And a couple of podcasts like INN News goes live over at INN Newsletter on Wednesday nights. And Angel in the afternoon, actually he goes to his. Boats goes live at INN Newsletter, and also Jesse Jet. And those are all podcasts over there, as well as INN One-on-One. When I do a one-on-one, that'll go over there, and it's its own podcast that you can download and watch and listen to over there. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. I love you all. Have a great night, everyone.
Good night.
Mwah. Ciao, baby.
I'll be back.
No! We just fucking lost the stream!
I guess this isn't such an awful place. It's not